Hey, friends. I spoke a little bit about how my meditation practice is evolving yesterday, and I find myself coming back to that today. One of the things that I've noticed about the way practices like meditation, but it could be anything. It could be, a physical discipline. It could be a musical practice. It could be a writing practice. One of the ways that they operate in life is that we we're building habits, right? Practice, one definition of the word practice would be to say that a practice is the process of gradually, incrementally modifying our habits. That's what practice is. If it's a musical practice, then we have a certain way of approaching our instrument, our music, our voice, whatever it is. We have what we know. There's what we know, and there's what we know how to do. And practice is the process of meeting that every day and moving it an increment down the road, or a few increments if it's a really good day. And so what I observed yesterday in my meditation practice was that I'd been doing the same thing for a long time, and I had more tools available to me than I was seeing at the time. I had more access than I was aware of. And who knows why yesterday in particular, my mind just offered me this new approach of basically taking two techniques and asking the question, why do you only ever practice them separately? What if you just allowed yourself to use them to support each other as part of the same meditation session? If you want details on this, you can go watch my post from yesterday. But that little moment of new possibilities kind of emerging out of the old, those are the moments that both we kind of live for in our practice. They're the moments that sustain us. They make us realize, oh, this inspires me. This moves me. This takes me somewhere new. And they're also the moments that sort of show us just the fact that practice really is ultimately about our habits. In my case, they reveal to me how habitual my practice has become. And that's, in some ways you could say that's a negative. It's like, oh, wow, look at how much on autopilot I've been all this time. But on another level, you could actually see it as just a building of awareness. Every time awareness expands, every single time that we go from less conscious to more conscious, a certain amount of our prior behavior, a certain amount of our previous habits or our existing habits becomes kind of uncomfortable for us. We go, oh, look at that. Yeesh. I've been just autopiloting my way through this. I thought I was practicing. This happens on piano to me all the time. Anytime that I have a breakthrough, whether it's a technical breakthrough or a musical sort of expressive breakthrough, whether it's a breakthrough of my listening becoming deeper, whatever it might be, anytime I have a breakthrough, I immediately realize, wow, I had not even noticed that this was possible. Or like, if it's in the case of in case of something technical, it might be, it might be that sensation of, whoa, my hand has a freedom here. Like I noticed something just recently as I started working with as I started engaging with the piano again after my wrist treatment. I had a wrist injury. It's now been treated a number of times, and the treatment from this osteopath released tension and like locked up bones in my wrist that had nothing to do with the injury. And so I started to kind of get the conclusion, like, thanks, universe. The injury just got me in the door to get these other issues looked at. If it hadn't been for the injury, I would never have gone to this guy and been like, can you take a look at my wrist? There's a problem here. Because I wouldn't have known. I truly wouldn't have known. And so as I started to approach the instrument with that new awareness, I also I started to realize I have a habit of playing a note and then staying stuck on it, as though that note is like a black hole and my hand sticks to it and won't let it go. Now, it's happening fast enough that anybody else watching probably might not have even picked up on it. But it wasn't even until I suddenly had this freedom in my wrist that I could suddenly feel, oh, I can just play. Like the act of playing inherently involves transmitting force down through the key. There's no reason to stay on that key afterwards. In fact, the act of transmitting force through my fingers naturally propels me. So what if that natural propulsion is actually what if playing this note is actually the first step in the process of playing the next note? That's actually where it begins. The next note begins as I spring off the previous note, or series of notes, or chord, or whatever. But that started to register with me in a kind of tactile way. And I was like, man, I've been playing with the black hole approach as long as I can remember. I never knew I was doing it. Just never knew I was doing it. And I've even had teachers observing me and diagnosing this in various ways, and my most recent teacher, Madeline in particular, is just brilliant about looking at what needs to happen technically in order to make the next thing possible. But this was so subtle. This kind of the sticky note syndrome was so subtle that I couldn't observe it until I had a new level of freedom. And I suspect, that there was so much unconsciousness bound up in that wrist that I couldn't really feel it. I couldn't feel that I was doing this until I suddenly had movement in there, and I was like, oh, well, now it feels weird to do that. Now that's, and it makes total sense that like something that's fused and stuck in my mechanism would manifest as a fusedness to the note or a stuckness in the movement. It makes perfect sense now that my awareness has arrived there, has expanded, has increased. But it also makes me immediately take a look at all the practice I've ever done up to very recently and be like, wow, you had no idea. And I practiced this instrument most of my life. Now, this problem may have emerged, like not at the beginning. I have a sense of when this issue probably came up, like when I probably damaged my mechanism. It's like kind of like halfway through my life, maybe a little earlier. But there's a lesson here. Sticky note syndrome for me is almost like a shorthand now for unconscious habitual behavior. And kind of like my meditation epiphany yesterday, where I was like, I've got these two techniques that I use, and I sort of like have to like decide at the beginning of my session, which one am I going to use? What do I need today? And it never, for whatever reason, never dawned on me, use them both. Like, not that we should always just throw everything into the pot, because sometimes having some definition and clarity to the practice that we're doing is actually quite important. But in this case, I had two mutually supportive, mutually reinforcing techniques that were different enough and complementary enough to create kind of like a perfect, larger practice. And it just took, for whatever reason, it just took until yesterday morning for me to be like, okay, let me try that. And I think, what I'm getting at with this is just that we want to, to the extent that we can, make ourselves available to see these things. Our lives will improve dramatically. Right? Like our ability to be present, our ability to feel, to create success, create movement, feel like we're moving, expanding, like our practice is taking us somewhere. That's what we all want. And we can't make moments like that happen. But we can, by being aware that maybe almost by being in anticipation of the next insight that will teach me that what I'm doing right now is habitual. Yeah, I'm going to say that again. Like we can, once we get familiar enough with how this works, we can start to anticipate that an insight is going to shed light on where we are now and make apparent the ways in which my current MO or my current status quo are habitual. If we can be ready to see that, just tell ourselves, I'm ready to see that. I'm ready to see where I'm compulsive. Open our heart to the idea that there is compulsion in us, that there are compulsive actions we are taking, there are compulsive trains of action, cascades of action that we engage in without even really knowing that we're doing that because they're so compulsive and they're so subconscious. if we can just open ourselves and be available for that, I think it creates the possibility for light to come in and for exciting new things to become available. There's a great expression, I forget who it's by. It's called, I forget, it's like a philosopher or somebody. I saw this as part of a philosophy symposium when I was living in London. And it's basically something like, thank goodness for the cracks, because that's how the light gets in. In other words, the structure of our lives, the structure of our thinking, our ideology, our beliefs, our relationships, our emotions, the structure of our life, our bodies, right? Thank goodness for the cracks, because that's how the light gets in. That's literally my experience with this injury. So that's just good to keep in mind, because it lets us embrace the falling away of what we no longer need, of what's no longer serving us. That's where I am today, folks. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. Have a great day. See you soon.